a great pleasure to have you all at this thematic workshop. This is part of the BioAirNet network, and this is from theme 3, which is to do with human health, behavior and well-being. Just before we get started, I just want to go through some house rules and etiquette. First of all, please test your speakers and headphones and microphone. And if you could keep yourself muted during the session, unless you want to speak, that would be great. And also please turn on your camera. It's much nicer to be able to see you all and all your backgrounds, virtual or real. If you could also open the participant panel and check that your name is listed. And please, if you would use your sort of normal, as I would call them, names, because this is the only way we can see who's been present at the workshop, for follow-on, for contact lists, for notification of future events and so on, because there was no formal registration for the workshop. And please do open the chat and say hello to everyone, and use the chat to ask questions to the speakers or to the other attendees. And as Fred just said, this session will be recorded. So if you do not want to be included in this recording, please inform the manager of BioAirNet, and the contact details there. And likewise, for information about how your data will be processed, please see our privacy policy on our website. Right then, so this is going to be the workshop for theme 3. And that's to do with the bioaerosols, the bioparticulate matter, and its impact on human health, behavior and well-being. I'm hosting this workshop. I'm Simon Jackson, and my co-hosts are Kambui, Emma Machado, as well as Zahir Nassar, who is the manager of BioAirNet, and Fred Coulon, who is the overall lead of the program. So what are we trying to achieve? What are the aims of the theme of this part of BioAirNet? It's really connected and builds on some of the other themes. So theme 1 was to do with the sources of biological particulate matter, and theme 2 on the characterization and sampling of biological particulate matter. We build very much onto that and integrate it as part of those themes. We want to better quantify the human exposure to the biological particulate matter. And in particular, hello?
We can't see your slides at the moment.
Ah. Did you see none of them?
No.
Okay, hang on a sec. Why is that? Okay, so the themes for the workshop, the aims for the workshop are really to be able to understand and quantify human exposure to the biological particulate matter, to better understand the associated public health impacts of long-term exposures, and as we shall see from the talks today, it's the broader public health impacts, including mental health impacts, which are becoming increasingly recognized, being associated with biological particulate matter, air pollution. And importantly, we want to look at potential and possible biological mechanisms by which those health impacts are generated. So we want to link the biological particulate matter with mechanisms, and then see how that can generate the health impacts that we see. And to do this, of course, we need to develop tools and models to be able to translate the data to inform exposure guidelines, and of course then to maybe inform policy, and that's going to be the theme connected with theme 4 of the network. Okay, so what are the key challenges? Well, we know that bioaerosols have been linked with many health effects, both physical and, as I said, more recently, it's recognized mental health effects. but associating exposure with those health effects is very challenging. And those links between health and the exposure to biological particulate matter is poorly understood. And that's certainly going to be explored in the talks this afternoon. But those gaps in our knowledge that we're going to be discussing can be reduced by breaking down the so-called silo mentality. So we're very comfortable in our own zones of experience, but I think these larger questions, these larger problems where environment and health interact can only be successfully understood and answered by coming out of our silos and working together across disciplines. And that's very much what the BioAirNet network is trying to do. And as you shall see from the talks, we're a cross breed of disciplines coming together to understand these problems. This interdisciplinary approach is sort of summarized in this diagram, where bioaerosols, we're looking at bioaerosols certainly in their health effects, and not just in the traditional effects in terms of respiratory diseases, infectious diseases, and so on, but also in the socioeconomic impacts, behavioral impacts, mental health. And to do that, we need to develop better biological models and biomarkers to understand the mechanisms, particularly inflammation and oxidative stress. And again, that's going to be touched upon in the talks this afternoon. We also have to understand the components of bioaerosols and how they interact. Components, of course, we know that many infectious diseases, and that's highlighted by the age we live in, the SARS-CoV-2 virus is transmitted via or through bioaerosols. And we know that other air pollutants, such as diesel exhaust particles, for example, can impact on the biological impact of those bioaerosol components. So we need to understand how the different components of air pollutants can work together. We also need to have better methods of monitoring, sampling, and developing the sources of those bioaerosols, and that's being covered by the other themes. So the aim of the workshop today is to mainly focus on exploring the knowledge gaps. So it's what we don't know. Along with the barriers and opportunities to identify the associations between the biological mechanisms of biological particulate matter exposure and health outcomes in the different indoor as well as outdoor environments. And then to identify and give recommendations for priority research areas. And we very much hope that part of the aims of the network is to identify those areas and therefore identify and put together research consortia that can apply themselves to answering those research questions. So this is the agenda and the format. So the first speaker will be Jean-Luc Jaffrezo from the University of Grenoble in France. And he's going to be talking about sources of PM10 in France, the apportionment of primary biogenic fractions, their oxidative potential, and the links with emission processes. And they're going to be using metabar coding to look at that. So we're very excited about that. Anna Hansel from the University of Leicester is going to be talking about the challenges and opportunities for bringing together exposure and health impacts to identify potential health impacts of bioaerosols. And so that's one of the key questions that we have for this theme. And then Andrei Rizetsky from the University of Chicago is going to be talking about bioaerosols and mental health disorders. And that's a new area that's being increasingly recognized, that the impact of bioaerosols and other air pollutants on mental health disorders. So we'll follow the talks with an interactive discussion session. And so you'll be put into breakout rooms. You'll have moderators in each breakout room, and there will be questions that you will consider in those breakout rooms. And then we'll reconvene at 4:45 for a wrap up with recommendations for future directions. Now I'm hoping there'll be time for a short coffee break in this, and I suggest that after the three speakers that we'll have a short break for coffee as we go into the breakout discussion sessions. So the questions that are going to be asked in the breakout sessions are, first of all, what are the knowledge gaps and methodologies required to quantify the levels of exposure and links with health impacts in those different scenarios? And then question 2 will be, what are the methodologies and approaches needed to understand the mechanisms of harm to human health and well-being? So those are two key questions that theme 3 is concerned with.